Hey everybody, and welcome to season 4, episode 2 to Kung Fu.
It's great to be back, man.
It is great to be back. God, I miss this shit.
Yeah, I feel we got off kind of to a false start because we were like, "Oh, this is episode 1 of season 4," and then huge break.
Right.
So I got to apologize to the fans for that.
It wasn't intentional, folks. It was we recorded. We intended to jump right into season 4, and we did the first episode, and then I got really sick, and then Alex ran away to Hong Kong, and it was just. Like, all of a sudden, we're like, oh, shit, it's a month and a half later, you know?
Yeah, I think part of the problem is that we're kind of just around so much. We're like, yeah, whatever, we'll do it on Friday. And sometimes we forget to look at our respective schedules. And it's like, oh, yeah, I'm not going to be here for the next 3 weeks. And we just started the new season. So that was just kind of somewhat bad planning on our part. So we apologize for those of you who waited out there. But again, hopefully that makes episode 2 all the more sweeter for everybody.
Oh man, well I gotta tell you, just for me, I mean, although I'm on the show and I'm, I guess, a co-host of the show, I'm probably one of the biggest fans of the show as well. So I'm gonna miss this also. Like I've been missing this. I'm not gonna lie, I enjoy this. You know, Alex is a really good friend of mine, and I like our weekly chats. And
yeah,
it's becoming a really important part of my life. And for guys that are friends of mine and friends of Alex's, and our listeners, we have just so many listeners that wrote in like, say, guys, where's the effing show, you know?
And we're just like, it's coming.
It's funny, on a personal note, I had I was with some family members last weekend for something, and an uncle who we don't see very often, he lives in Atlanta. He says to me, he goes, Sean, he's retired. He goes, I don't even know what Wing Chun is, but I like that podcast of yours. You guys are funny.
Yeah. I suppose it's interesting to see the people who get into it who maybe were not 100% like JKD or Wing Chun people, because I think our assumption has always been that those are the only, all 8 of those people out there are going to be the ones who listen to us, All
right. Well, on that note, hey, Uncle Don. Hey, Aunt Linda.
Yeah, luckily, I think the subject matter of martial arts is so boring for my parents that they didn't listen to this.
Thank God they don't listen to it, because then they'd hate me. He's making fun of Alex again.
So, well, I suppose the good thing about having taken a break is that a lot of stuff has actually happened since we last had our podcast. One, the McGregor Mayweather fight happened.
Fucking Connor.
Yeah, I went to Hong Kong. My Hong Kong trip was really amazing. I had the chance to do all sorts of things, which many of which are probably worthy of their, I could do a podcast just on each of those things on its own. And and then I came back, became super busy, and then had to deal with some kind of weird social media issue that happened for something over the summer, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But at least hopefully we have a lot of stuff to talk about tonight.
Well, I saw you in some pictures with some of the most famous people in Wing Chun.
That's right. As a matter of fact, it was kind of funny.
First of all, before you start, was I the topic of conversation?
Well, I talked to David Peterson about you for sure, and David Peterson's wife was there, and I met her, and she's just a lovely lady. She's amazing. Like she apparently had listened to the podcast, knows about you, knows about me, had seen photos of my kids from social media, and sweet. I was like, yeah, she's so sweet, like really amazing. I'm always happy to see when Wing Chun or just martial art guys in general have a great partner, because as doing what we do, it's not easy for our significant others. When we spend hours on end talking about this stuff, practicing it, thinking about it, our mind is just on like the angle of a movement or a punch or something like that, and that's not easy. And so I think we're very lucky with. You're lucky with Lori. I'm very lucky with Carol, and David Peterson's certainly very lucky with his wife as well, because we are not easy men.
Right, exactly right.
So yeah, I went to Hong Kong. Basically, it was just a short trip, about 2 weeks or so, and I go to Hong Kong regularly, even if I don't have anything special planned. Like Wing Chun wise, it's my wife's family's in Hong Kong, so we just kind of go there. It's like visiting family. I brought one of my students, Antonio, who you met, a world-famous, world-renowned saxophone player, jazz musician.
That dude, by the way. Man.
He played a couple shows while he was in Hong Kong too, and like awesome. Everyone there knew him, and it was amazing. He was like a total star over there too. It was incredible.
He gave me a CD, dude. It rocks, man.
Yeah,
it's so good. It's on my playlist in my car. It is awesome, and he also gave me an incredible gift.
That's right, the Moyat painting.
Oh
right?
my God, it's freaking incredible.
Oh, you know what's also funny? I saw, so I was hanging out with Antonio the other day, and we were at Bryant Park, and we saw your son John on the street. So Antonio got to meet John briefly.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah. So that was pretty awesome. So Antonio came to Hong Kong with me, which was really cool. And it just so happened that during the time I was there, it happened to coincide with an event that Sifu Wan Kam Leung was having in Hong Kong, which was basically a Bai Si ceremony with one of his students who's like a famous or a very, let's just say, a very established real estate developer in Hong Kong. And by established, the dude's got some money. So basically, Wan Kam Leung had this amazing event. It was at the Shangri-La Hotel in Tsim Sha Tsui, which is an amazing hotel, luxury hotel. And the banquet, there were like hundreds of people there. It was crazy. And it was... I hope nobody gets upset for me saying it was all paid for by their team. Nobody paid for anything. Right. And this was like top of the line food at a top of the line place. And they had like the displays and posters with Sifu Wan Kam Leung, like high quality. So it was amazing. And they had like, when you entered, they had like a little place where you could take photos at the reception. It was amazing. And Sifu Wan Kam Leung invited me when he was here in New York. And he's like, yeah, I'm doing a Bai Si ceremony. And I thought it was going to be something kind of small. And this was a huge event. Like his whole association was there from all over the world. And almost every single world-renowned Wing Chun Sifu was there as well, especially all of those who were living in Hong Kong. Everyone was there. It was completely nuts. I'm like, if there was a bomb that dropped on the Shangri-La Hotel that night, like 90% of the world's Wing Chun would have been decimated right then and there. It was like we were all under one roof. There was obviously a lot of Wong Sun Leung guys because Wan Kam Leung's originally.
I figured that's why I wasn't invited. I was kind of like the designated like survivor. Just in case something happened, they knew the art would be like left in my hands. So I get it, you know.
If it had blown up, I'd call you in my dying breath on the cell phone, Sean.
You're the Sifu now.
Keep it alive, and then that'll be the end. My notes are in my book in my apartment. So it was amazing. So I had a chance to meet a lot of obviously a lot of the Wong Sun Leung Wing Chun people. John Wong was there, who's the son of Wong Sun Leung. I'm Facebook friends with him, but it was the first time we met face to face. He knew who I was, and it was like very cool. He was super nice, spoke pretty good English. Of course, David Peterson was there, which was amazing. We had him as a guest, I think, on our first season of the podcast. And obviously, Sifu David Peterson is one of the most established and most renowned students of Wong Sun Leung teaching worldwide. It was super great to meet him, and he wasn't feeling well that night. In fact, there was a chance he might not have been able to make it. He had like a huge migraine, but he came and he felt better throughout the course of the evening. It was cool, and I got to see people I had not seen for a long time, like Benno Westra, who teaches under Wan Kam Leung in the Netherlands, and obviously a bunch of the Wan Kam Leung guys. But I also got to see like Chen Chi Man was there, who's a good friend of mine. Sifu Kent Lee, and also, I don't know if you know who this guy is. Do you know who Po Kin Hwa is? Po Kin Hwa is the Chinese name. Po Kin Hwa was originally a student of Leung Seung, and he was a training partner of Leung Ting. And during the time that Leung Ting was learning from Yip Man, essentially Po Kin Hwa was his training partner. So,
nice.
So Leung Ting would like learn from Yip Man, and then he would go and train these things with Po Kin Hwa. But Po Kin Hwa was never part of Leung Ting's association, so he was kind of this guy who had the chance to train with Leung Ting and get all the stuff from Yip Man, but then was never really beholden to being in Leung Ting's organization. So he's a really interesting cat. And I had only read about him in books, and he was there, and I talked to him, and I was like, hey, I've been following you since I was a teenager. And he was like, because I'm such a geek, you know what I mean? And he was I'm like, oh, and I remember you were, you know, in the event with Tang Sang in 1969, and then you did this, and I was like listing off all the things he had done, and he just looked at me like I was some kind of weird stalker, and I realized I had to cut myself off.
He's definitely filing a restraining order on Nathan Code right now.
Well, it's like, you know, if I was walking down the street and I saw Brad Pitt, I'd be like, hey, cool, look, there's Brad Pitt. But when I see these Wing Chun guys that I've been reading about since I was a teenager, and I know especially many of them don't get the accolades that they deserve. Obviously, you have some famous sifus. You have Mo Yat and Leung Ting and William Cheung and Wong Sun Leung. But there are so many other people there who were part of the development of the art. And were supportive figures to these larger figures, so to speak. And so I've always read about them, and I've always been very interested in meeting them and finding out, you know, what their story is. And speaking of Leung Ting was also there too at the event.
Holy shit, I didn't know that.
Yes, my former teacher was there as well. It was very funny. We saw that outside, before you went in, they had the seating chart, and it was mostly in Chinese because most of the people there were Chinese. So we saw where we were sitting, and then I looked at the table next to it, and I saw the name Leung Ting, right? And then I showed my wife and said, hey, Leung Ting is coming. My Qigong is going to be here. And then, of course, you know, for people who may not know, I was in Leung Ting's organization for a bit. I was his representative in New York, and I was a private student of his for about 9 years. And then I famously left his association because of politics, and I have not seen him since I quit the association. So it was very funny.
God.
There's this total like swanky party in Hong Kong where everybody's dressed to the nines, and I'm invited there based on my own merits, because since I left the Leung Ting organization, I've made my own name now for whatever that's worth. And so, and then there's my former teacher sitting at the table next to me. By the way, he was sitting at the same table as Carter Wong. Do you know Carter Wong?
I know the name,
He's an old old Hong Kong movie star, but he was in the movie Big Trouble in Little China. He was the Three Storms.
Right.
Big Trouble in Little China. He was like the big one who blew up at the end. That's Carter Wong. So he was like sitting next to Leung Ting, and so it was very funny. But I didn't really pay attention because honestly, I left not really because of Leung Ting. I left because of internal politics. I don't have any grievance with him, so to speak, besides the fact that last year he told the Hong Kong press that I had only learned Wing Chun for 1 week. But I mean, I don't like. I'm not going to go up to him and be like, "Yo, what was up with you saying I only learned for 1 week?" Because that would be defensive, and that would also mean that somehow I was hurt by that. But actually, as we've discussed before, that attack on me actually made me famous in Hong Kong and gave me the nickname the Kung Fu Genius. So I need to thank him, if anything. You know?
Right, sure.
So I don't have any. I'm not going to go up to him and be like, "Yo, what's up with that?"
You're an adult. You know what I mean?
I just didn't say anything. But I heard from somebody else who was at our table that he was kind of giving me dirty looks the whole night. I thought that was kind of funny. So anyway, but yeah, Yip Chun was there, and many people were there. It was pretty cool, and there were also some famous masters from other kung fu styles as well. So it was like, if you're into Wing Chun and you're into like the Hong Kong martial arts scene, that night was pretty awesome. So I have to thank Sifu Wan Kam Leung for the invite, and also Sifu William Kwok here in New York. He was also there as well. Yeah, it was really great. So just a great moment of like, it felt that when you compare the Wing Chun scene in the 80s, you know, where you had the so-called Wing Chun wars, you know, William Cheung and Imin, and then you had, you know, all sorts of guys kind of warring each other and showing up to each other's schools. It was definitely like that time period is done. You know, there were all the different lineages, they were under there. And who knows, when everyone goes home, they're probably going to talk shit about each other. Right. But everybody was there. Everybody was eating. Everybody was having a good time. And it felt like, hopefully, those times are over. And maybe if this is happening now in Hong Kong, then maybe the rest of the world, the rest of the Wing Chun world can kind of start to take suit and start to become adults about this, you know?
That's
so
awesome,
so anyway, that was kind of a recap of that event in Hong Kong as well. And so yeah, what do you think of the Mayweather McGregor fight?
You know, I gotta be honest with you. I knew, of course. I mean, intellectually, I didn't think McGregor was going to win. But as a fan, I'm not going to lie. As a fan, I was rooting for him to win.
Of course.
And the first few rounds, I thought he did well. Now,
he did very well.
Granted, Mayweather's style was to hold back and learn and I get all that. So, but it showed me a couple of things. It showed me that I think against any other boxer, I think McGregor can do well. You know, McGregor went 10 rounds with arguably the best boxer ever.
Right.
Obviously, with the best boxer today. I mean, he went 10 rounds with the guy.
Yeah.
The other thing it showed me is that if you looked at the scorecard, one or two of the judges, of the three judges, I think one or two of them only gave McGregor the first round. They didn't even give him the second or third round.
It's completely ridiculous.
So it showed me that there was no way McGregor was going to win that fight unless he fucking knocked him out.
Knocked him out of the ring, right?
There was no way. McGregor could have controlled that fight for all 12 rounds. There was no way he was winning.
Yeah.
Because there was rounds, even if it was Mayweather holding back to learn and judge and see what his timing was, there's no way you can tell me that Mayweather won round 2.
Sure.
And a couple of the judges had Mayweather up in, round 2, 10-9 on round 2. And
it's a reminder of, like, whenever we get pissed off about MMA having, like, a weird decision, and then it's like, and then you realize, oh yeah, but boxing is totally corrupt. I totally forgot about that.
Really,
it's like
it made me sit there and say, at the end of the fight, I sat there and said, this is why I can't watch boxing. It's the most corrupt, vile piece of shit in the world. Now, the boxers themselves are incredible athletes and can all kick my ass.
Of course.
So boxers, I'm not dissing you and what you do. I'm dissing the judging and the politics in your sport.
Right.
It's complete utter bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an echo chamber, and I think the problem is that when you look at, like, all the talk that was going on online before the fight, like, it's the same thing. Everyone lives in their echo chamber. The boxing fans, they live in their echo chamber. The MMA fans, they live in theirs. The McGregor fans, they live in theirs. So nobody is being swayed by anybody else's arguments online. If a good boxing analyst talked before the fight and said, this is why McGregor cannot win the fight, the MMA guys are just going to get upset, or the McGregor fans are going to get upset, because nobody can actually discuss these things anymore. And then after the fight, many of, Mike Tyson, Sugar Ray Leonard, they were like, wow, absolute respect to Conor McGregor for what he was able to do, because no boxer thought that he was going to be able to do that. They thought that he would really just get flattened. Like, basically what Randy Couture did to James Toney, who came to MMA, they thought that was going to happen to McGregor. Like, it was just going to be a one-sided schooling, right? And when you look at the first few rounds, I mean, McGregor was pacing himself. He was doing very well. And the stats are, McGregor landed more punches on Mayweather than Canelo did.
Right.
Than any other boxer who ever fought Mayweather. Conor landed more. Now, of course, the Mayweather fans are going to go, oh, well, Mayweather's now 40. The thing is, you can't bring up stats, you can't bring up facts without the other side immediately getting defensive. I'm not saying anything with that. I'm just saying that's a stat.
Right.
All right. I'm not saying, like, okay, he's whatever. I don't need to hear the explanation. I'm just saying that's actually what happened. And I don't think going into the fight, anybody would say, do you think even if Conor McGregor doesn't win, he would land more punches on Mayweather than any other boxer ever did against him? He'd be like, no way, especially if he's not going to win. How is he going to land so many punches?
Right, exactly.
But he did. So regardless of what you have to say, first of all, they got paid. This was the biggest money fight. This was smart on both sides. They were both very smart. So, I mean, props to them. And all the haters who want to say, oh, dude, screw you. They did what nobody else did. And you can't talk shit about that in any way. Second, Conor represented himself very well, because I know people get tired of this argument, but it's a valid argument. I don't see any boxer going into whoever the Floyd Mayweather of MMA is, going into the ring with them and being able to put a performance against an MMA fighter with MMA rules that is anywhere close to what Conor was able to do against the specialist Floyd Mayweather. There's no chance.
Absolutely agree.
Mayweather would not last one round with Conor in an MMA match, okay? Having said that, Conor was still able to go into, what was it, the 8th round or 9th round or whatever with Mayweather and say whatever, oh, that was Mayweather's game plan. Yeah, but if Conor was not qualified to be there, he shouldn't have been getting out of the first or second rounds to begin with.
There's not a boxer out there, I mean, that could go 3 rounds with Conor McGregor in an MMA fight. Could you imagine Mayweather with Conor having MMA tools available to him?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh my God, it would have been over in
Yeah, it would be a
round.
one-sided trouncing, and the thing is, it's like, and that's saying, and that's not a diss on Mayweather, okay? That I'm just saying, like, okay, like, let's be honest here, right? And then the boxing guys, they're so like, well, of course, I actually thought that Conor boxed very well, like his boxing skill was really good. And he used some unorthodox tactics with like kind of the long range stuff or whatever. Like I thought he actually, if it wasn't, in my opinion, his gas tank, which was kind of an issue because Conor always fades in that kind of end of the second act kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right, sure.
If it wasn't for that, I think that he could have at least gone the distance. He wouldn't have won a decision because, I mean, when you saw the scorecards, you were like, oh my God, I forgot how corrupt boxing is. But no way that flipped the other way. Mayweather is going to last one round. And all the boxing guys, they're always like criticizing MMA boxing. And it's like, you guys don't realize it's called mixed martial arts for a reason.
Right.
It's like kickboxing, Thai boxing. Thai boxers look at some MMA guys kickboxing and say it's no good. Yeah, but the difference is they're having to deal with somebody trying to wrestle them, trying to grapple them. There's different timing, different equipment. You're not having boxing gloves. You have small gloves. And when you're able to kick and knee and elbow, that actually takes away a lot of the problems that boxing presents. Because if you're fighting against someone who's a good boxer in MMA, well, you can use the kicks and the wrestling to nullify a lot of that stuff. But when you're stuck just staying toe-to-toe with somebody, boxing versus boxing, then of course we're talking about specialists, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
One of the things I found incredibly frustrating, you know, I get it, that's part of his game, but Mayweather, you know, hey, Mayweather's a bitch, I'm sorry. So, you know,
but tell me how you really feel.
You know, the first time, every time that Conor even got close to him,
he turned around.
He literally turned around. He literally fucking turned around. It was like, oh, don't hit me anymore. You know, I mean, yeah, he used the rule set to the best of his to his advantage. I'm not knocking him for that. I'm just saying he's a complete bitch. That's all.
Well, it's interesting because it's kind of like how your eyes get used to seeing a certain type of thing, and then you see something else, and it just looks very strange. Like the big question was: is Conor going to just out of sheer muscle memory in the middle of the fight throw a kick or throw an elbow, right? And Conor, to his defense, he kept it straight boxing. Now, he would sometimes clinch and get behind where you could kind of see there was like a jiu-jitsu or a wrestling reflex in there. But also, every time he came in close and started to put pressure, Mayweather turned around. And that was the moment where I went like, you know, I have a similar moment that happens to me. I'm not like a hardcore soccer fan, right? But I will watch the World Cup when it happens every 4 years, right? So I don't follow like the year-to-year, season-by-season games. But when World Cup comes around, because I am half German, I will watch the World Cup, right? And like for the last 10 years, I've been watching or 10, 15 years, because I'm such a huge MMA fan. Something always strikes me really odd about soccer. In soccer, they're always trying to take a dive, like, oh, the guy kicked me in the shin so that they could get a penalty kick, right? So what you see is like this weird juxtaposition of somebody lightly shoulder checking somebody and the other guy going, like totally screaming about it, when you're used to seeing people going in there, taking punches in the face, and they keep going with no complaints, right? Right. There's always a moment when I'm watching soccer for the first time in a long time, and then I see somebody barely get touched and then go down and grab his shin, and I'm like, what the hell is that? Because watching martial arts and full contact MMA has just made my brain doesn't recognize that as anything that would remotely hurt somebody. You know what I mean?
Right, sure.
And I had the same thing happen when I watched the Mayweather fight.
Yeah. Because
every time Conor went in there and then he turtled up, and then there was a moment in my mind where I go, he turned around, give him an elbow, pull him down, put him in, you know, like
take his back.
And then I was going, oh, that's this stupid game, and that's your get out of fighting free card in every moment. You know what I mean? Like at least in MMA, if you're getting punched and you decide to clinch somebody and wrestle or take them down, you're still doing something.
Right.
And you're still in the fight, and you can take the guy down, and then you still have to deal with submissions and getting punched there. But there's like this thing like, I'm just going to do this, and now suddenly you can't do anything to me, where I go, this isn't a real fight anymore. Like, as much as I love boxing and I respect the craft of boxing, I practice boxing, I train boxing at regularly with a coach, and I hit pads, and I do light sparring, and I always want to make sure that I know about boxing, because I think it's very important as a martial arts instructor. There's just something about watching it after watching so much MMA where I just go like, right. Yeah, I can appreciate the beauty of a good boxer, but I'm looking at this and just going like, my fight brain just goes, you just gave your back. You should either get choked or you should have an elbow. Like my Wing Chun self-defense brain goes, oh, you turned, I'm going to elbow your head. All right. And sure. Then like my MMA brain goes, oh, you turned, I'm going to put you in a choke. Right. Or just like oh, you turned around, I'm going to grab your face and pull you to the ground. Right. But then it's like, oh, no, the fight stops here. And the other thing, too, is that the ref, who did a really good job, I have to say. I was actually surprised that he did a good job in the beginning of the fight. At the end of the fight, he was totally saving Mayweather.
Oh, he was
the moment they were in the clip was like, and it was like, oh, come on, man. So and that's when I realized it's like, oh yeah, I totally forgot. This is why people hate boxing.
Right.
It's got way too much money involved. There are way too many shady characters. It's like just because Don King is not active in there, the lineal spirit of Don King lives on in boxing.
Well, that was the biggest thing, man. I came away from that and said, yep. Just needed a reminder why I don't watch boxing anymore.
Right. Speaking of that, actually, tonight is the big Canelo Triple G fight, which is kind of interesting because, okay, then we're talking about just pure boxing or whatever, and there's part of me that might go watch that after this podcast tonight, but I also might just go to bed and read about it tomorrow on Twitter.
Not a shot I'm going to watch it. Not a shot. When we're done, I'll be picking up my guitar and relaxing.
Very good, very good. You said we had a question sent into the Dudes of Kung Fu page, something about fundamentals or something.
Yeah,
like
you know what? I feel bad because I didn't jot down the person's name that wrote it in, but they asked if we could speak. Would we be willing to speak about what we feel are the fundamentals of our respective arts?
Okay.
And and he actually said, he goes, I'm not asking you to give away secrets. Just when someone says they do your art, what are the fundamentals of the arts? What are something that you feel they should know as a practitioner of your art? And I thought it was a pretty good question. So
sure. It's also a question that I feel could be the topic of 2, 3, 4, 5 podcasts, because we could say it very simply, and it would still beg a lot of explanation and clarification.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, I think kind of to make it, maybe we do the Cliff Notes version of it today, and then maybe we go into it in a little more detail in another podcast. I think that might be a great.
Yeah, I mean, if you were going to talk about, I said this 100 times on the podcast. If I was going to talk about Jeet Kune Do and the fundamentals of Jeet Kune Do, to me, the fundamentals of Jeet Kune Do are having the knowledge of and the ability to control the distance, have the proper timing, being able to break rhythm, and employ the 5 ways of attack all at the same time. That this idea of controlling distance, timing, and rhythm, 5 ways of attack, is I hate this word, but I'm using the philosophical fundamental of Jeet Kune Do. Now, Jeet Kune Do also has a structure, and I feel it has a physical structure. If someone tells me they do JKD, they should know the straight lead. They should know certain tools. They should know certain footwork. They should know why certain footwork works. They should know why certain tools work. But more than that, to me, the litmus test is distance, timing, and rhythm. You have to understand when someone says to me, "Oh, I do Jeet Kune Do," and I start talking to them about breaking rhythm, and they have no idea what I'm talking about, or they have this kindergarten version in their head. I understand where it comes from. I've never mocked them. They have this version of this idea of breaking rhythm it's just so raw. And there is a finesse to breaking rhythm. There is a finesse to controlling distance. And there is a finesse to having and controlling the timing of a bout that someone that does JKD on any level should be working on getting better at. And that is a fundamental aspect of Jeet Kune Do that, to me, should run throughout all lineages. It does not, but it should run throughout all lineages. You know, if you talk to a high-level Jeet Kune Do concepts guy under several lineages, and you start talking to them about, you know, distance control, and and you see their eyes light up, and oh yeah, and you know, when you do this, you can take this angle. You know, they have an understanding of distance, and they don't sit there and say, well, there's kicking range and punching range and trapping range and grappling range. Yeah. We all read that same fucking thing for the last 20 years. It's nonsense. I'm not talking about being able to name ranges. I'm talking about being able to control distances. And that's a huge fundamental to me. That's when I think of fundamentals, that's what comes into my head, is that you have to work on your distance, timing, rhythm, and completely understand the 5 ways of attack. You have to understand why there's 5 ways of attack. Not that people have this misconception, which is another question we got, what are misconceptions about our art, but people have this misconception about Jeet Kune Do that all attacks fall within the 5 ways of attack. I'm sorry, it's wrong. That's why people, knuckleheads, post online all the time, oh, my Sifu invented a 6th way of attack, and my Sifu found a 6th and 7th way of attack. Who gives a shit? The ways of attack are there for a reason. There are a necessary component to your tactics and strategy of your art. There's a reason you have 5. If you do not understand why there's 5, I beg you to go back and try and learn Jeet Kune Do. And if your Sifu doesn't know why there's 5, well then, I'm not saying lose that Sifu, but go off on your own a little bit and try to examine what you're doing. Try and understand why is there 5. What happens when I move that creates the idea that I need 5? Why was Bruce Lee so excited that he had 5 ways of attack? These are the fundamentals of the art. Alex, your turn.
Yeah, I think there's always a bit of a slippery slope when you talk about fundamentals, and you hit the nail on the head too, because it's like, we can discuss fundamentals in terms of like, okay, what are the fundamental techniques? Like you mentioned about like, well, you need to know the straight lead, or you need to know this, but that's not necessarily when you boil it down to, but what are the actual fundamentals? We're really talking about the concepts or the principles that the art is based on. Because, yeah, we can say fundamentals of Wing Chun are chain punching, advancing steps, stepping forward, and those are the physical tools, the fundamentals you learn physically when you start learning Wing Chun. But whether you are a beginner or intermediate or whatever, you are expressing a certain idea or a certain way of fighting. And that idea, that's actually what we're talking about when we talk about fundamentals here. Because we could say the fundamentals of Wing Chun are the Sunam Tao form, single arm Chi Sao, straight, like, but that's actually not really the answer. We can, once we understand what we're trying to do, meaning what are the conceptual fundamentals of the art, then of course we work backwards and then we start doing it in a physical way, like learning the basics and then building up from there. And I'm also of the opinion that advanced training, or whatever is called advanced, especially in Wing Chun, is nothing more than consolidated basics. It's advanced because it requires basics to be able to do it. It's not advanced because it's complicated.
Right.
It's advanced because it requires a foundation. So Wing Chun people kind of go back and forth, but for me, we could say Loi Lao Hoi Song La Tao Chik Chong, which is you stay with what comes, you send off what goes away, and thrust forward as the hand is freed, is kind of the basic idea behind what we're trying to apply in Wing Chun. As Wing Chun generally assumes we're standing in front of the guy launches an attack, and we go in and do our thing. We generally don't talk about, for lack of a better term, kickboxing with somebody. We're not going back and forth and moving, because this is, one is, first of all, it's not the style of fighting that existed in China at that time, and two, we generally tend to deal with, or the guy's in your face, he's saying something, he takes a swing, boom, we go and do it. We're talking about that situation, right? So Wing Chun tends to specialize in that situation much more than it does kind of in the whole going back and forth, which is in my opinion why Wing Chun people usually stutter a little bit when they try to apply it in a kickboxing or an MMA style setting, because they need to learn how to transition their in-close fighting skills to the distance game first before they do that, because the traditional Wing Chun system is based on practical fighting starting in a close range against a sudden, very quick, violent attack, and you handle it very quickly. It's not talking about distance and timing back and forth, you know, against somebody who's kind of moving away and checking you out, right? So if we say stay with what comes, all right, that means that whatever's coming at us, we're not trying to stop it and block it. We try to stay with it. Now, by staying, that implies sticking. It implies yielding. It implies moving out of the way. There are all sorts of things that are implied by that word stay, all right? So something comes and we just stay with it. We stick with it. We can let it go. We can stick with it, whatever. If it retreats a little bit, all right, we'll go forward. We'll stay there. We don't move our hands back, right? And if the arm is freed completely, bam, we go forward. This is the idea of forward pressure, right? We apply that idea at distance. We apply it once we're sticking, and we apply it, you know, even when we're even closer in super close range fighting. It's the same. It doesn't change. And that doesn't change if you're a beginner, and it doesn't change if you're so-called advanced. You just have more tools to be able to apply it more efficiently, right? But that is, in my opinion, the kind of the core of what Wing Chun is. It's the basic principles. There's some other people that say it's Lin Xiu Dai Da, with linking offense and defense, so-called simultaneous offense and defense. But I find that that is just one aspect of what we're doing in Wing Chun. But I wouldn't necessarily say that all Wing Chun is simultaneous offense and defense. The best Wing Chun is, the most direct Wing Chun is, but sometimes we can't attack and defend at the same time, especially if you're caught by surprise or you have to move back. There are times. So I don't think that a simultaneous offense and defense is the highest. I think it's one of the most important. I think the principles of sticking, staying, and thrusting forward as a hand is freed is really kind of fundamental. By the way, do you know why there's one of the reasons why there's so many different takes in the Yip Man system on, well, Wing Chun in general? We've discussed this before. Obviously, various times people learned and so on. But even in the principles, okay, when we say loi, lao, hoi, song, right, which is loi means to come. Yeah. So lao means to stay, hoi means to go, song means to give. Like if it goes, you give with it, like you stay with it, right? The problem is this character lao, all right? In loi lao, the second character in those four characters, that character is problematic because Chinese is contextual. And sometimes if these things aren't explained clearly, you can take one context or take another. Now, the problem is the character lao in Chinese, that specific character, can mean to stay, like to stay with something. Mm-hmm. It can mean to hold back. And it can also mean to stop. It depends on the context, and it depends what else is being said with it. Now, the Wing Chun principles are so vague, it can actually be translated a number of different ways. This is why some Wing Chun Sifu say, stay with what comes. Or they say some variation of that, right? Because they're using the stay definition of lao. Right. But there's some Sifus that say, no, lao means to stop. That's why when a punch comes, they use an aggressive blocking style movement rather than kind of trying to borrow the force or give way or whatever, right? So you have some guys that like the punch comes and they use like a really aggressive hard style tan sao, right? And they're saying they're saying they're following it correctly because in their mind, lao means to stop. Whatever comes, stop it, right? And the other guy said, whatever comes, stay with it, right? And so that's the reason why even within the Yip Man family, you can have someone legitimately read the same couplet on the wall and have a totally different expression of it. And these are part of the problems of the oral tradition of Chinese martial arts. So, you know, that's kind of why, you know, those things can easily be misinterpreted.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, and when you ask anybody to discuss the fundamentals of their system, there's always going to be, like you say, two sets of fundamentals. There's the physical fundamentals, yes, and then there's the principles or the philosophical fundamentals of the system. And I think when you talk with people that have been doing the martial arts for more than a couple of years, they understand that the higher level understanding of the art is within the philosophical end of it. Because you've now have the ability to do the physical end, and now you have to know why you do that.
Right.
You know, there's something I said before about the litmus test of JKD in my mind being distance, timing, rhythm, 5 ways of attack, and there's something else I use for that. I know I've said this on prior podcasts, so I wanted to clean it up a little bit. I always have that little expression that I say is simple, direct, and non-classical as the litmus test of JKD. And when I use that is when people specifically ask me about adding something to their art in the name of Jeet Kune Do. Mm-hmm. So they'll say to me, I'm really good at doing a jump spinning hook kick. Should I add that to my JKD? And I always say, well, you should do whatever you're really good at, because it's fun to do shit that you're good at. But whether it should be taught as Jeet Kune Do, then is the movement simple? Is it direct? And is it done with non-classical rhythms? That should be your litmus test if something is going to be taught as Jeet Kune Do. Now, just because it doesn't fall within that doesn't mean it's something you can't teach. It just means it's something that I would say is not Jeet Kune Do. So if I'm good at a jump spinning hook kick, which, hey, listen, if you haven't seen an obese man throw a jump spinning hook kick, you haven't lived. But,
I'm sure there are videos on YouTube.
Hey, I'll flash the camera, bro. If you can throw a jump spinning hook kick, that's awesome. But it's not Jeet Kune Do. It's not simple in a true understanding of simple. It's not direct by any stretch of the imagination. And depending on how you use it, could it be used with unclassical rhythms? And that should be the litmus test for physical tools. So when you have a structure to your art, like in Jeet Kune Do, we'll talk about you have tools, you have strategies, you have principles. They're all connected, and when you add something to your basket of Jeet Kune Do, when it's whether it's a strategy, whether it is a tool or a drill or something to that effect, it affects everything else in that basket. You know, the idea of simplicity in Jeet Kune Do, this idea of not carrying around excess baggage, is taken with it's taken seriously. At least it should be. And this idea of, I saw this awesome drill that these 4 Thai boxers were doing, or I saw this awesome drill that this Wing Chun group was doing, whatever, it doesn't matter. I want to add it to my art. Well, that's fine. But understand that the drill may add something that you like, and at the same time add something you don't like. So you need to understand the drill fully before you add it. And you have to know what's its impact on the rest of my system. Mm-hmm. Does it teach me any bad habits as well? You know, and quite frankly, every drill is going to teach you a bad habit. So are the negatives worth the positives? You know, this here is a fundamental understanding of Jeet Kune Do. This is when I talk about this idea of having a fundamental foundation of an understanding of your art. Is I know when I can break my art, and when I could change what I'm doing, and how it's going to affect my art, what I do, and what my students do, and my friends do. You cannot just add for the sake of add. You know, there's this famous sign that hung in Guru Dan's Filipino Kali Academy and his Jeet Kune Do school. It's absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is specifically your own. I don't believe the sign actually hung in Bruce Lee's school, but it doesn't matter. I think it's one of the most misunderstood signs or expressions in JKD. And you have to come to grips with these things if you're going to have a fundamental understanding of the art. You know, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless add what is specifically your own. When you talk about just add what is specifically your own, fucks everything else up. It's not add whatever the fuck you want. It's add what is specifically your own, in that Alex is a different person than I am. You know, I'm a 52-year-old fat man. Alex is a phenom. It's just we're different people. So we have to add our persona to the art. I can't sit there and do what Alex does. So we have to add what is specifically our own. We have to sit there and say, this is who I am as a person, so I have to add that to my art, because I have to capitalize on what I am and lower the negatives of what I am. At my size, at my weight, hey, I don't have the mobility that Alex has. So I shouldn't train in a way that counts on having the nimble footwork that Alex would have that I don't have.
I thought you always said nipple footwork, sorry.
Speaking of nipples, like, I literally saw Alex's nipples like 5 times in the last 3 days. Can we fucking please take up a donation and buy this guy a t-shirt?
I would like to implore our Dudes of Kung Fu fans out there, if you have the extra time, to go back through every single podcast and list the number of times Sean makes mention about me not wearing a shirt. Because I'm starting to have the feeling that he's spending an inordinate amount of time looking at me without my shirt on. So it's at the point now where
I'm looking at the picture right now on my phone.
Yeah, but of course I tag you now because I know how much you like it. So I've made it a thing now to tag you on all my shirtless photos.
It's kind of oddly arousing, but I just want to, my stomach hurts.
So, I mentioned at the beginning that I had a bit of a social media snafu. I just wanted to talk about that. Well, it wasn't even a social media snafu, and it wasn't even really my thing. But I just wanted to discuss this. I put it online. I put it out there. So as many people know, we've discussed it on the podcast before. For my 15-year anniversary this year for the school, I invited Mak Chi Kong, who's a famous Hong Gar Sifu from Hong Kong, good friend of mine. I've known him for many years. And I invited him to basically be a guest instructor and guest lecturer at my seminar this year. And I did it, which I think some people found it somewhat interesting that this was the first year I didn't invite a Wing Chun Sifu from Hong Kong to teach, but quite frankly, I've invited my Kung Fu uncles a number of times. My students have seen them. There's really not a whole lot of other people in the Wing Chun world, obviously besides Jim Rosalando or somebody like that, who I would really want to invite to my school, because it's important for me that the Wing Chun Sifu that comes to my school adds to the students' understanding and that they're better for it. And sometimes Wing Chun Sifus are just really big in spinning their version of things, and they come even if they pretend not to, they come in a very political way. And I don't want to expose my students to that stuff. I just want my students to have good training. So I thought maybe this year I would just bring a non-Wing Chun person to give them a lecture about Southern Chinese martial arts and Hung Gar and stuff like that, because it's my goal that all the students who train, especially my advanced students, are educated on martial arts, that they're not just good at Wing Chun and qualified as Wing Chun instructors, but they also know about boxing, or they know a little bit about jiu-jitsu, or they know about the difference between MMA and what we do. And I want those insights to come from experience and not just to come from dogma or something that I told them. I want them to know this by bringing in experts firsthand. Now, this has nothing to do with me mixing styles, or, now I can imagine that my former association is telling people, now Alex is learning Hung Gar and mixing that, because that's the way they are. They don't understand how I could invite another martial arts master from another style and that not mean that I'm learning their style now, or I'm mixing it or something like that, because they are generally in the traditional martial arts establishment, especially Chinese martial arts, they're so threatened by other martial arts. I mean, they're unbelievably threatened by them. Even when they tell their students, Wing Chun is better than all of the other Chinese martial arts. Shaolin and Hung Gar and all those styles, they're totally crap. And we have a much smarter fighting system, and we are much better, okay? Which, even though the Wing Chun people are not going to say that openly, I'll tell you what, that's what they say behind closed doors, all right? Let's just be honest, okay? Wing Chun is better than this style. Wing Chun is better than that style. And look, and I know that the probably there are Hungar guys out there who say it about their style, about another style. Jiu-jitsu guys say, everyone says it. But the thing that I always hate is, one, I hate that people lie about the fact that they don't say it. If you say it, then be open about it. Don't be a coward. If you really think your style is better, tell everybody and then show it. But I'm also of the opinion that people should stop saying shit like that, you know, because the fact that I love Wing Chun, or the fact that I think Wing Chun is a practical martial art, does not mean that I need to hate any other martial art under the sun for me to really like Wing Chun and to teach Wing Chun. And that's the thing that I always find people have a hard time understanding. You can be proud to be a Jeet Kune Do practitioner. You can be proud to be a Wing Chun practitioner. You can love it above anything else you do. And that doesn't mean that you have to hate karate or hate judo or hate Hungar or hate anything else. In fact, you can have a very healthy appreciation of all other martial arts, and that doesn't dilute the fact that you still love yours. But in the traditional martial arts establishment, that is a big problem. So the old school faction, all right, let's talk about like the real original guys, like people who learned in the 50s and 60s. For them, these martial arts were these institutions. You didn't give the secrets out to other styles, and you certainly would not take in information from other styles because, I mean, heaven forbid, can you imagine this, Sean? Somebody from another style comes into your school and tells you all about how they fight. That would be a really terrible thing, right? Like I've had jiu-jitsu guys come in and show me, this is how we take people down, and this is how we would take a Wing Chun person down. Probably not a bad idea that we know that, right? And that, you know, but the thing is that because they're so threatened by this kind of stuff, it's like there was a video Maxifu posted from his seminar at my school where he was giving the lecture about how Hong Kong movements work in fighting, and he was like demonstrating this on one of my students. Okay, now whenever we have a guest, and it doesn't matter if it's a jiu-jitsu guy or if it's Jim Rosolando, or if it's one of my Wing Chun Kung Fu family, or if it's Vincent Lin, my guys are always respectful when there's a guest because they know, hey, if Sifu invited this guy, Sifu respects this guy, we're here to learn. We're not here to go, oh, well, in Wing Chun, we would do this and then be that guy. You know what I mean? Sure. So my guys are always very, very respectful. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. There was two Wing Chun Sifus from Germany who came and visited my school. They're from another association. And they're total assholes, all right? And they're kind of, they make a bunch of videos and they're kind of making a name for themselves or whatever. And there was a point in time where I thought they were friendly guys or whatever, right? They came to my school and I was like, hey, you can sit and watch one of my classes. And then at the very end, and it was one of my advanced guys, I said, hey, do you want to maybe show my guys a little bit about what you guys do, all right? Now, my guys know that if there's a guest in there, unless I told them, hey, I don't like this guy, beat them up, which happens very rarely, by the way. I actually never say that anymore. That hasn't happened for 10 years, all right? So the audience knows. But if there's a guest member, like a guest that comes in, and I say, hey, can you do a little cheese out with our guest here? Because our guest is going to explain to us what they do. So you would understand, Sean, that guy's demoing, teaching, doing something, right?
It's not a competitive thing.
It's not a competitive thing. So this happened a few years ago. These two Wing Chun knuckleheads that pretended to be very friendly with me showed up to my school. And then one of them, I said, hey, would you mind showing our students a little bit about what you do? Because what they do is a little bit different. They were former WT guys, but now they do other stuff, whatever, right? So they grabbed one of my students, Ethan, who you've met before. Sure. Ethan's super sweet guy. And Ethan, he wasn't even a technician level. He was still in the student ranks at that time. I kind of gave him the signal, like, yeah, just go along with whatever the guy does. You're not, like, going to fight back or whatever, right? And so he's just doing punsao with this guy, and then this guy's demonstrating some stuff, right? And then he'll do, like, a basic attack, and my student is not really defending. He's just kind of playing along with him a little bit, right? And then, like, and then he tries something, and then my student is just moving around a little bit with him, right? And even while demonstrating, this guy pokes my student in the eye, right? And it was just kind of like, and then he got into this thing. He's like, oh, well, when this happens in our school, we never apologize to each other because we understand that this is part of training, right? And I'm like, hey, I'm all for tough training, and shit happens all the time. But the thing that doesn't happen is when an instructor is demonstrating an exercise, he pokes a fucking student in the eye. Like, that's just, you're supposed to be a master. That's not supposed to happen, right? And then his apology, his non-apology was kind of like, dude, you poked somebody in the eye who wasn't even fighting back. You're kind of a dick, right? And then he tried some stuff, and my student, on 2 occasions, just his natural reaction came up, and he did something, and his hand was in front of the guy's face, and then he put it down right away immediately because I gave him the look like, hey, take it easy. These guys left, and everything was cool, and then they went back to Germany and told everybody how they destroyed my top students. And I was like, wait, what? Oh, like, first of all, was not my top student at that time. He's one of my top students now. He wasn't at that time.
I was just saying, I wouldn't fuck with Ethan.
Ethan is no joke, but this is like 5, 6 years ago or something like that, right? And so, and then, but the kind of thing, like, if I was invited to do a lecture at your class, Sean, and you told me to grab one of your guys and show it, I would be like, okay, this is what we do. This is our position. Maybe it's a little bit different than yours. I would show this, show that, whatever, and then I wouldn't go, I totally showed Sean's guys what was up, like I totally obliterated that guy. Because it's like, what kind of pride do you take as a so-called instructor that you beat up someone else's cooperative, willing students?
Right,
okay,
yeah,
so anyway,
stupid.
that was a totally side tangent. Nothing like this even happened with Maxifu. Maxifu was just like, okay, if someone fires a punch at you, and then Maxifu would just show something, but it was super cooperative, right? Well, Maxifu posted this video online, and he says, I was showing some Wing Chun students at City Wing Chun how Hung Gar fights.
Mm-hmm.
And because my students were obviously wearing Wing Chun shirts.
Oh my God, no, they didn't wear Wing Chun shirts.
They were wearing, can you imagine Wing Chun students wearing Wing Chun shirts?
In a Wing Chun school?
Yeah, in a Wing Chun school.
Oh, well, you know
and
what?
Maxifu is wearing his Hung Gar
Come
uniform.
on, you can't have that.
And he was showing Hung Gar techniques, which, of course, the Wing Chun people won't say it, but of course are completely inferior to Wing Chun, right? The Hung Gar techniques are nowhere near, right? They won't say it, but he was showing this stuff and making Wing Chun lose face. And I'm going like, wait, first of all, this is already a few months ago, right? And I'm going, wait, somebody's now getting butthurt about this? And unfortunately, and I can't say who it is, but we're talking about very senior people in the Wing Chun family. We're not talking about people like you and me.
You could almost hear the panties running up their ass, right?
Yes, these are people who are very high up the food chain, and I'm going, and they sent me a personal, because I didn't even know Maxifu posted it. I had not even seen it. It had been up for a day, right? And I wasn't on social media that day. And I go, and then Maxifu sends me like this cryptic message in the middle of the night. He goes, Alex, I seem to have posted something that has caused you trouble. I'm going to take it down and delete it. And I was like, huh?
Right.
And then some other guy, I'm not going to say who it is, posted it to me and said, your students are wearing the Wing Chun T-shirt while a Hung Gar master is using Wing Chun, using Hung Gar techniques on them, and this is making Wing Chun look very bad. And I go, he was a guest lecturer. He's showing my students how other styles of Kung Fu fight, so my students know what other people do and know that there are other styles out there that also approach the problem of fighting, not just Wing Chun.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yes, but they are wearing the Wing Chun T-shirt. So, and I was like, well, and the funny thing is, I don't want anybody to accuse me and go, Alex, you don't understand Chinese tradition. You have to understand that these are traditional sifus and they see it from this. Don't get in my face with that shit. I have a Chinese wife. I speak Chinese. I grew up in the traditional Chinese system. I know the Chinese system. I know that that kind of thing is a huge no-no because you have another master of another style, and then your student is wearing a Wing Chun T-shirt. He's wearing. So does that mean that the Hung Gar guy beats the Wing Chun? And I'm going, yeah, maybe 40 years ago, if video technology existed, it'd be understandable why people got upset about that. It's 2017. The general martial arts scene doesn't give a shit about Kung Fu anymore. They give a crap about MMA. And here we are in the time of relative peace. Most Kung Fu styles are cool with each other because we're just trying to hold on to what we got, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay? And now I invite a famous master who happens to be my friend to give a lecture in my school, and somehow Wing Chun is losing face. I do not mix Hung Gar techniques with Wing Chun. Anybody who comes to my school knows that. I'm 100% Wing Chun, baby. Everyone knows that, right?
Yeah, baby. That sounded tough.
But my guys, they know what a Hung Gar guy does. They know what a jiu-jitsu guy does. They know what a boxer is going to do. They know what a kickboxer is going to do. Because I wasn't afraid to bring those people into my school. I wasn't afraid they were going to lure my students away. And so I understand why the Chinese get upset about this. But I am a white male who's 39 years old, living in 2017.
Who identifies as
a rock star. All right? And I just don't see that anymore. And for me, they don't need to explain to me where I know where it comes from, but the thing is, I reject it. Right. At this point, we want information. We want to know, and that doesn't make us any less of Wing Chun people that a Hung Gar guy came and showed my guys how Hung Gar fights. If Wing Chun was supposedly designed to fight against all the other Kung Fu styles, don't you think they might want to know something about other Kung Fu styles? Right. If Wing Chun is so great at stopping people from punching them in the face, don't you think we should know how other people are going to try to punch us in the face? Right? So this kind of thing, I'm just like, ugh, this is why the old generation is killing us right now. You know, we need to respect them and we need to learn from them, but we need to realize that come tomorrow, it's a new day, man. And we need to grab this thing by the horns and change direction ASAP, man, before we are, in everyone's eyes, just a bunch of pajama-clad guys arguing with each other about the angle of the pinky finger and saying who learned what and in what order and in what generation and where do they stand in a photo, right? That's the stuff that just kills Kung Fu daily, man. So anyway, I just want to get that over this. I love Mak Chi Kong. He is the man. He can come to my school whenever he wants.
He's such a nice guy.
When I was in Hong Kong a few weeks ago, I was learning sword from him because I want to improve the ability to use my Pacham Do against other weapons. So I might want to learn about other weapons, right? And if anybody wants to look at it and go, Alex is now learning broadsword. Does that mean he's mixing it in his Wing Chun? No. But I'm a Wing Chun guy who knows Pacham Do and how the broadsword works, and you're not. so that's the difference, right? So anyway,
I said it 100 times. People, you want to learn Wing Chun, come to New York and train with Alex. I'm telling you, he's just got an awesome freaking school, guys, girls. It's the most welcoming, well-equipped, awesome atmosphere school I've ever been in. And man, I'd love to insult Alex all day long. We all know that, but his school is awesome. And I can give his school no greater compliment than I'm about to give right now. And maybe Alex is smart enough to know what I'm about to say. I literally, my son had one time kind of expressed wanting to learn Wing Chun. And I told him to join Alex's school. Okay? That's how much I respect Alex and his school. You know, it's not that I can't teach my son. But if you ever tried to teach a kid anything, you know you want to fucking kill him. So, like, I suggested that he join Alex's school. So I'm giving Alex his props just for today. Trust me, I'll make fun of him again.
Hey man, that means a lot. I know you told me that before when I told you that I saw John the other day. It really means a lot to me. I mean, that you put that kind of trust and yeah. So. Thank you for that. I will send you your endorsement check next week. So, and if you guys ever want to learn Jeet Kune Do and you happen to be in Long Island of all places.
Well, you know what? I don't live in Long Island, jerk off. I live in Staten Island. Remember, you got to take a
fuck, that's right. Oh my God. Did I just say Long Island? My God.
You know, you're just such a fucking Queens person. It's amazing. You think the whole world revolves around your little stupid
It's very
island.
difficult for me to say the word Staten Island without wanting to gag a little bit.
It's like Staten Island, you know. It's
Island.
The land of the orange people.
The land of the orange people. All right, guys. Well, hey, today was a lot of fun. It's great to be back. And just want to remind you guys, if you have not done so already, to like our Facebook page, Dudes of Kung Fu. Follow us on Twitter, Dudes of Kung Fu. Follow Sean on Twitter, Big Sean Madigan. Follow me on Twitter, The Kung Fu Genius. Sifu Alex Richter. I think my Twitter handle is actually at City Wing Chun, though, by the way. You know, we got more stuff coming out for you. We promise to be back on a regular schedule now that we're all in New York, and we have lots of great stuff coming for you for this season. So thank you so much for being around. As always, send us messages to the Dudes of Kung Fu page on Facebook. Let us know what you want us to talk about. Send us questions. Stop sending us nudes, please, because we just don't have time to answer them all. And that's it. Thank you, Sean. That was a lot of fun. We'll see you next week.
Be good, guys. Bye-bye.